Well, what I want to ask you is, do you think that feminism overall, you say that it's been hurtful to black women. I'm really curious to get a white woman's perspective on that because I've heard people say that and I've seen different opinions. But can you name specifically why black women don't benefit from, say, white liberal feminists and the ideology that they share with them?
Well, I think so much of the mantra of white feminism, of feminism broadly, that tends to be spouted mostly by white women, is it should be all about career, all about advancing yourself professionally. You don't need a man. You shouldn't want a man. Men are unnecessary. Men are the enemy, and that's awful. It's an awful way to think, and it's an awful idea to put in a young woman's head that her life is all about herself and all about her work and all about her career without giving any appreciation or thought or encouragement to women planning for their personal happiness. And when I say personal happiness, I'm talking about women who aspire to the traditional roles of wife and mother.
Hmm.
If you want to be married and have children, in addition to your career, I'm not saying that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think they are. I've always had both. Well, or I had both up until a few years ago. I certainly always encouraged women to work and have their own career. But for women who want marriage and motherhood, they're being almost talked away from it. And the problem for black women, very specifically, is that they have, in large numbers, outperformed black men academically and professionally, which makes finding a husband almost impossible.
Well,
Because what
I mean,
black woman who has achieved well academically, who is doing well professionally, wants to be with a man who can't keep up with her, or who's going to be resentful of her achievement, or of her intellect, or of her capability for greatness?
Well,
So,
but you do know a lot of that is a product of social engineering. That's not just sort of this random thing, right? I mean, when you're giving, young men, 18-year-old black men, 50-year prison sentences for possession of, tiny amounts of drugs that white kids have on college campuses all the time. By the way, you do know that that does have an impact on families.
and I do know that those black men with that itty bitty little bit amount of drugs, if they didn't have that itty bitty little amount of drugs, they wouldn't find themselves in trouble
But
altogether.
remember this though, Susan. If this were applied to white males in the same way with the same vigor, you would George Bush never would have been president. He would have had a criminal record,
I understand that.
or he'd be dead.
It's not, or at least today, it's not. So knowing that it's not going to be applied equally, be smarter for yourself.
Yeah.
Stay away from anything that's going to get you in trouble. I
Well,
understand that the laws are not fair and they need to be changed. I get that. You've
yeah.
made me very aware of that, and I appreciate that. That was a significant learning experience for me to recognize that the laws really are not being doled out fairly between blacks and whites. I get that. But until we're at a point where the laws change so that it is administered more equitably, if you're a black man, do not step out of line. Come on, you
Well,
know that you're not going to get a fair shake, so don't test the system because you know you're going to lose.
well, hey,
Do not test.
maybe one day we can invent a world where every young black man is perfect and doesn't make mistakes.
Oh,
But hey,
come
I
on.
will say this:
Say perfect. I'm
young
saying
people.
know
Well,
that if you know that the game is rigged against you, then
right. Well, but
you got
yeah,
to
but
play
at
smart.
the same time, you got to remember a lot of the people that get caught in the criminal justice system are young, 18, 19 years old, brains not even fully developed. Your brain doesn't fully develop till you're 25. So they're going to make decisions that are not good. The same as the crazy white guys on college campuses and the fraternities who do stuff in college that they would never do as adult men.
Okay,
Um,
terrible
it,
answer. Terrible answer, and do not
no, it's not a
accusate.
terrible answer. It's
It's
a
a
fact.
terrible
It is a
thing. Don't
fact.
act like
Come
these
on, Susan.
17 year
Come
old
on.
black men are too stupid to understand what this game is. They're not. They totally get it. Don't tell me their
Well, you
brain
know
isn't
what?
fully
Actually,
formed.
they're not.
It's formed
They're,
enough to know. Don't. You're going to tell me that an 18 or 19-year-old black man is too stupid to recognize that
No,
the
no, no,
game
not
is rigged
stupid. Well, first
against
of all,
him?
I'll say when I was 18, 19, I was stupid compared to what I am now. I will say that. I wasn't dumb, and I was educated for my age, but I was still naive. There were things I did not know about life. So I will just say that, in light of what you're saying about the family and things like that, I agree with that point, and I do agree that the difference does exist. But I also agree that, when you're talking about what's happening in our society, you cannot talk about the state of the black man without talking about what government has done to destroy him. Now, but what I want to ask you about is I want to mention something. I'm going to throw a couple facts at you, and I want you to kind of give me your take on
Right?
this. And this relates to what you were saying about women and marriage and family. Three stats. One, the median net worth of a single black woman is $5. I don't know if you knew that or not. Did you know that? It's $5. Little.
The
I think
net
for. I think for.
worth.
Yeah, I think for a single white woman, the median is maybe 46 to 50,000, something like that. For a black woman, it's $5. Second stat: half of all Americans now, half. There's a recent study at Harvard. Half of all Americans cannot afford to pay their rent. That they have a measure for whether you're rent poor and your rent exceeds a certain percentage of your income. Half of all Americans are in this rent poor category because the average rent in America has risen to $1,372, which might not be a lot in New York, but the rest of the country it is a lot, and it's gone up 26% in 2 years. The third stat is this: child care costs for one child now exceed the amount of money people pay in rent. They also exceed the amount of people that people pay for in-state tuition. So, given what what we're seeing, I can tell you this: what I've been saying to black women, again, in my humble opinion, I'd love to get your take on this. Is I've told them, I said, look, childcare is incredibly expensive. You have kids. Obviously, you want to be thoughtful about who you choose to partner with. Maybe whatever. But even beyond that, maybe homeschooling your kids would be healthy for them because you're able to sort of give them a better education, I believe, in many cases in the school system. But also, you're cutting the cost in childcare. You can start your own business, so you're dealing with the unemployment problem. I know a mom who did that. She was a professor
Yeah.
who said, "I'm going to school my kids at home, and I'm going to build a business around what I'm doing as a homeschooling parent." So now she makes more money. She spends more time with her kids. She's a better mom. Her kids are better adjusted, and they're getting a better education. All because she sort of made that shift. She focused on family, and she talks about what you talk about. Where her name's Nomalanga Mushali Moses. She's from HealthyBlackWoman.com.
I
You
know
might have met her.
Nomalanga. We've spoken together.
Yeah,
What a,
and
what a beautiful girl.
yeah,
Beautiful.
and one of the things Nomalanga says, which is consistent with what you said, I know I said a lot, but I'd love for you to process this for me. But she says that because we're being told to focus so much on ourselves and our careers, we're abandoning and neglecting our children. She says now that I'm homeschooling my kids and I'm running my own business, I'm achieving my professional goals and my goals as a mother and as a wife, and my family's just better off because of it. What do you think?
Well, I think that's fabulous if you could make that work for you. Not all women are equipped to homeschool. They don't have the patience for it. They don't have the training for it. They don't. They just don't know how to do it. For some families, it would be toxic for children to not be able to get out of their own home into an environment where they could be socialized with other children and learn from a variety of stimuli. I mean, I think it's unusual and
Well,
wonderful if you could do it.
Well, what if you throw out the homeschooling part? What if you have a
Okay.
three? What if you have a 3 year old and your 3 year old would have to go to daycare, which would cost you more than rent, which means you basically be working just to pay the daycare. And you say, "I'm going to quit my job and stay home." That I don't have the money for the as much money as I did before, but the amount I'm saving is almost as much as I'm losing.
But now,
So what do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. And I started my own business at home when my young one was getting ready to go off to kindergarten because I knew I wanted to do something. I'd go crazy if I did nothing. And I would finally have the time once he was off in kindergarten. And this goes back to 1996, I guess. I started my own business from home, from the couch that I'm sitting on now, and made more money than I ever did in a corporate environment. And I was very well paid when I worked for corporations. I worked for Arthur Anderson, I worked for Bankers Trust. I was extremely well paid. But when I left that and started my own business, I made 4 times as much as that from the couch in my living room. And I was always class mom. It was invisible to my children that I worked because I was always here. I always took them to school. I was picking them up from school. I made 4 times as much as I did as a vice president for a major corporation.
Mm.
I love the idea, and I encourage women all the time to think about starting a home-based business because even if it's not wildly successful, look, I got a little bit lucky. I was wildly successful year one. Wildly successful year one. But even if you're not, the amount of money you're saving and not having to get childcare and transportation costs for yourself, for your child, and wardrobe things for yourself. An enormous savings. You don't have to be wildly successful your first year or your second year, but if you stay at it, you have the chance of actually making some serious money
Mm,
as you develop the idea of whatever it is. When I started my business, it was in research, in human resources research. And I would research organization charts basically for publishing companies, which was useful to human resource managers in hiring when they were looking to hire people. If they knew who was in place at their competitors, their HR people could contact these candidates directly and see if they could poach them, basically. But what I provided was the research, and it was a very easy job for me to do. I did it from home. We didn't have computers then, but I did it on the phone. I kept notes in a spiral notebook, and it turned into an incredibly successful
mm,
business in very little time. I encourage women all the time to think about a home-based business, something that will allow them to bill on a project basis, on an hourly basis. Think about what they're good at. Start networking. See if you can get a little bit of business from people you know or people you worked with in the past. And it's amazing how quickly a business can grow like that. But
mm.
I love the idea of women being entrepreneurial, starting their own business. Spend more time at home. Don't work that hard for somebody else. Do it for yourself. Work for yourself. Earn that what you earn. Keep what you earn.
Mm.
And it will allow you more time with your family, which I think at the end of the day is the most important thing. You'll never make that back. You'll never get that back. I mean, you might earn a lot of money at some point in the future, but you'll never get back these years with your young children. So I'm saying anything you could do. I talk to young women frequently who are doing very well at work and they've recently been married, and I always when I check in with them, so when are you gonna have a baby? When are you going to have a baby? I'm always asking, when are you going to have a baby? Have a baby, you should have a baby. And they're saying, well, it's so expensive. I really do. And you can imagine I do this because I really do this. And they say, it's so expensive, I can't afford it, blah, 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 blah. And the truth is that once you have a child, your lifestyle changes. You're no longer interested in going out for, fancy evenings and expensive bottles of wine and blah, 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 and fancy vacation. You want to be home with your baby. You want to watch your baby grow. There's nothing more joyous than enjoying a simple cooked home meal in your home. Watch something good on TV that the whole family enjoys, play a game of Scrabble, be with your children, be with your babies. Doesn't cost very much. Your lifestyle changes. So even if you're going to be without that income, that big corporate income, it's okay because you're living a different life, and you should be living a different life when you have very young children.
Mm.